And as always, we're going to be looking for accurate context, good risk management, and always exercising good patience.
Everybody who's traded has gone through periods of time where their strategy hasn't worked.
Where if not a hard stop, you should reevaluate the trades you're in based on time.
That's what we're here for, is to put ourselves in the best success. A trading routine does that, builds that habit, lets you know what to work on, what to reflect on, and what to improve on the next day.
Good afternoon, friends and traders. Welcome to the Limit Up Podcast. I am Dan Hodgman, and we have an older, grayer Jack Pelzer in the studio today. His name's John Hoagland. I don't know if any of you recognize him, but he's been at Top Step for a few years, and he's got a little bit of experience in trading. For those of you listening and not tuning in here with us on YouTube, John Hoagland's here filling in for Jack. Jack's out gallivanting around. I don't know where he's at, honestly, but happy to have Hoag here with us. Hoag, how are you?
I'm good. It's an honor to be here. I don't usually get on the podcast. It's exciting to be here.
You should be honored. I'm a special guy to chat with, as you may know.
You are. You can see how well read you are by the books on the shelves behind you.
All right, I'm going to preface this. I am in a office my parents have. They use it as storage as I wait for my new condo to be closed up and moved into next week. So next Thursday, I'll be in my new condo, but I'm utilizing an office space, aka a storage unit of my parents at the moment to be recording.
Well, I just had to give you a little jab back after the whole grayer thing. So
That's fair. That's fair. We can get you some Just for Men beard and maybe darken up that facial hair a little bit, get you on my color.
Yeah, except for the fact that people are going to know. I mean, it's you're going to show up all nice and brown one day, and after being gray the day before.
I've got the Benjamin Button disease in reverse, or not in reverse. I got the Benjamin Button disease, and I as I age, I just look younger.
I get younger and younger. Right.
There you go. That's what you can say. Well, John's
all the clean living.
Right. All right. John's going to fill my shoes here today. John's going to give us a quick down and dirty rundown of what happened here in the markets today. Obviously some good opportunity, John, huh?
Well, yeah, some in more markets than some. Crude oil, we were looking at that rollover range, kind of the top of it at 89.70, and we opened and left that opening range at the bottom and drove higher the better part of the day. I mean, we traded all the way up to 91.03. So pretty good upside opportunity after the EIA announcement of a drop of 7 million barrels yesterday. So a little bit of supply questions there. The E-mini S&Ps opened right in the middle of the range, right in the middle of value, and stayed pretty much right in the middle of range, right in the middle of value all day. One thing I want to give you a notice of for tomorrow is the market has tried to move higher against some pretty stiff negative delta. Negative delta against direction indicates longer time frame buyers in the marketplace. If we have a big jump in open interest tomorrow, I will be looking for a continuation to the upside. Gold traded down and settled it down below that weekly kickoff low of 1775. That's one below 1776. That's the spirit. So the euro also settled down below the weekly kickoff level today too. So there's some things setting up for tomorrow that might be interesting trading. I'm not going to be here. I'm kind of bummed that I'm not going to be involved, because sometimes it takes, a few days or near the end of the week for some of the good kind of, well, I'd hate to use setups, but some of the good situations to present themselves. And we may see those tomorrow.
It's a summer Friday. Get out, enjoy some time. Don't do the, I'm going to be bummed I'm not here. Go enjoy your time off.
Yeah, it's always a mixed emotions, right? I'm glad that I'm doing something else, and at the same time, I do enjoy what I do here. So it's always mixed emotions. I'll be looking forward to Monday.
All right, there we go. Well, John and I today are going to sit down and talk a little bit about taking losses, some of the emotional things we go through, some of the things we can do to avoid them, and some of the signs that potentially were leading into losses. But first, got to reminisce a little bit. For those of you that have been around for more than a couple years at this point, we're going back pre-COVID. That was the last time I think John and I did anything at 3:00 in the afternoon, just the two of us. John and I spent many years in the same room, sitting just 10 feet from each other in the same office, doing the recaps together every single day. So it's kind of fun being back here with you, John. And I heard some sirens earlier this morning, and part of me was wondering, there goes John.
My ride.
There's his ride. Every single ambulance, fire truck, cop car siren that went off outside our window, you'd hear it go, and you could time it. You give it about 3 seconds, and all of a sudden, even if he's on the phone, there's my ride.
There's my ride.
You hear it coming from the corner where he was sitting. So it was always a treat.
Sitting there looking at that screen, it's almost like I could kind of reach out and grab you, but it would be some long arms.
It'd be I'm a little far from you here, over state lines. So, well, let's kind of get into it, John. Talk about losses. First thing I want to propose at you, my first question for you. You've been at this for longer than I've been alive.
Not quite.
I think so.
Maybe. I don't know.
I think so. You started this before I was born.
What year were you born?
1989.
Yeah, I've been here longer than, boy.
I know.
I look good. I look good for how old I am.
Well, we'll see what your wife says about that.
No, she has,
but all right,
she calls me.
Let's talk about it. It's changed, right? Like you go back to 1941, I think, when you started in the industry versus 2022, things have changed a little bit. Obviously, we're post Great Depression. But when you started, losses were a little bit different, right? You're compared to now. You were in a pit. Things were different versus now. So how have things changed? And like when you first got into the industry, were losses viewed versus what they're looked at now?
Well, there's similarities and differences. Stepping onto the trading floor with my shiny new badge, I came from traders. My dad knew trading, my brother knew trading, and stepping onto the trading floor with my shiny new badge, everybody was telling me to learn how to take a loss. And as a young man, even somebody that was familiar with the industry, it was kind of like, well, I'm not here to take losses, so I don't know why you're telling me this, but it doesn't take too long to figure it out. One of the things that my dad expounded on that idea of is you're better off getting out when you can and not when you have to. So on the trading floor, you were in a kind of an adversarial area. You had direct competitors standing shoulder to shoulder and chest to back with you, but you also had some allies in the pit. And if you were doing something that they knew was wrong and even you knew was wrong to do, sometimes you'd have somebody, grab you and say, hey, what are you doing? What are you doing? And sometimes you'd need that to kind of take you out of the mental state that you're in, the anger, the taking losses. We tend to, take them personally, and we get mad, and we can kind of turn into sabotage animals, and you had friends around, or hopefully you had friends around on the trading pit to snap you out of it. Hey, what are you doing? Okay, you know what? You're right. I got to get out of this, and let's figure it out. Now we're all sitting alone and, in an office or a home or wherever we are, and we don't have that direct contact. So we're stuck in our own heads. And sometimes becomes very, very difficult to recognize when your switch is flipped, and to be able to walk away, and because you don't have somebody standing there next to you going, hey, what are you doing? What are you doing? There's lots of ways to take losses, and usually the first out is the best one.
John, it's interesting as I think through it. When I first got into this, standing on the floor, your job was to create liquidity as a local trader, especially on the option side. You had to tell them what the market was, and even if you didn't want the trade, you still had to fill some orders. Like if you saw that broker was struggling to get the 1,000 or 2,000 that they needed, you'd say, okay, I'll take 50. And then you had to find a way to work with that. And that's where I think, back then you had to take the orders because like you said, you had to create allies. And if you could help the broker get his fills as a local, there was a benefit for you. He's going to remember me now. If the broker's coming in and he's stuck and regularly you're not filling that side of it, they're going to overlook your hand when you're trying to get the fill too. If you tie with someone and he's coming in with 500 and both of you on 500 and it's a tie, we're all going to have the bias and go, this guy has filled every order for me, especially when I'm down to my, scraping the barrel and I need those fills. This guy just ignores me. They're going to remember that. And so times have changed now. No one knows who's on the other side of that order. So you can snipe, you can pick and choose. You don't have to create liquidity. And I think when you are sitting at home, you don't have those allies there or the people nudging you or seeing what's going on. You end up creating more liquidity because the market's moving and you want to get in. You want to be a participant of it. And so that's like the first step I would say into all of this is like times have changed. Take advantage of some of these areas of like, you don't have to be in every move. You can sit back and no one knows who you are.
Well, you're really talking about, something that was on the trading floor was kind of standard practice, but wasn't necessarily all the way on the up and up. If you were, taking, trades off of brokers that maybe they were stuck on, something like that, the next time they had a good order, they would look to you. And then there was always the Ginzy where, they got 50 to sell and you bid 60 for 10 of them and he gives you 10 and you bid half and you're going to get the other 40. Nobody else is going to get them. So you buy a little bit of the beginning of the package and then you buy the package at a much better price.
Well, on the screens, John, we call it feed it one to get the market to come into your favor. Right. So they're just feeding it to bring that market in their favor.
And I still do that if I'm long a couple and the market's trying to go, I'll just sell one out just to feed the rally, just to make the market think I'm short, and then it'll go, right?
It works every time.
It seems to do it. It seems to.
I find myself like scrolling on the dome like it's a cell phone. Like, I'll go like this. Come on. And it works. Works every time.
You got to get out and push.
Exactly. It works. Yeah, sometimes you got to do that. Obviously, on the floor, it was, all within legal rights, and brokers had the responsibility to hit the guy that came first, then the second guy, then the third guy, and do their best. Mm-hmm. And there were ties, and there's arguments, and you can contest the trades. I mean, they have, replay judge. I'm trying to blank. John, what was their title? The guys that stood on the top, that you could contest. Yeah, you had compliance and audits sitting up in the rafters or standing on the top of the edge of the pit, going, this guy raised his hand well before everyone else.
Or if you traded through somebody, somebody was bidding 70s and you sold 60s, the guy'd say, hey, I'm bid 70s. So you'd have to make him good on his 70s. Mm-hmm. And then you could trade the 60s. There was the pit seemed very chaotic, but it was actually very organized. You couldn't bid or offer outside the best bidder offer. That would confuse the pit. You could get fined for that. If you had orders that were just off the market, you could not, if it was 70 offer in the pit and you had orders to sell 80s, you can't offer those 80s while it's 70 offer. Same as on the bid. If it's half bid, you can't bid 40s when people are bidding half. It just confuses the pit. There were really busy times when sometimes you would trade through somebody and then he would let the exchange know. The exchange they'd blow a big whistle in the S&P pit and they would take your trade out. Mm-hmm. So if you filled a stop on that, you were screwed.
Well, John, we've kind of digressed. I think our topic here is let's talk losses and not a history lesson of the floor, which sure. I find myself going off on tangents very easily, especially when it's something fun and exciting like this. Mm-hmm. But to bring it back in, I know you had some stuff that you specifically wanted to kind of touch on about losses. Mm-hmm. So let's kind of dive into that and where your thought process is.
Well, in trading, there are going to be losses. There's absolutely nothing we can think of. There's absolutely no way we can stop that. There is nothing perfect, nothing finite, and nothing ever happens the same way twice. So we end up with this situation where we're going to have wins, and those are going to be great. We're going to have losses, and those aren't going to be great. But we don't have to attach our self-worth to the losses. We don't have to expand those losses. There were a number of people that I've met along the road here that have said really smart things to me. And there was one guy that I was standing next to in the pit, and he would take a loss and he would verbally say, "Okay, good." So I'd say, after, a little while, I said, I noticed when you take a loss, when you get out of a losing trade, you say, "Okay, good." Why? Why, everybody else gets mad. You say, "Okay, good." He said, "Well, it's just the way I view it. I'm not viewing it as taking a loss as something that's happening to me. It's something that I'm paying for. I'm paying for a little bit of information from the marketplace. So I'm going to pay as little as I can. And if I take that loss, I'm going to say, okay, I got out of it. That's good. I learned a little bit from the market, bought a little bit of information from the marketplace, and now I can move on." When it comes to me trading, I'm okay taking a loss, and I'm okay, taking an occasional loss. Where it really affects me is when I get into consecutive losses, when in a trading day, if I take 3 consecutive losses, that tends to flip my switch, right? I'll get triggered. I'll get angry. I'll start to feel a little bit of venom for the market, which is really for me. Anytime you feel anger or venom towards the marketplace, there's only one person it's going to affect, and that's going to be you, or in this case, me. So I've learned to respect the fact that I'm probably a little bit compromised in my decision-making process at that time, and I will step away. I will do something else for a while. Believe me, I got plenty of things to do that can kind of take me away from the market. Getting something else done really helps to make me feel better about the losses that I just took, and to reconcile them, and to let that venom go. Whenever we have those losses that make us angry, that anger is really for us. Another thing that my dad always said is, being angry, it doesn't help anything. Even if you're like angry at a group of people, half the people you're angry at don't know you're angry at them, and the other half don't give a shit, or pardon my French there, but
we can say that one on the podcast.
We can.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Good. All right. The other ones don't care. There's only one person it's going to affect, and that's you. So, when it comes to anger and dealing with it, it seems to me, especially when dealing with anger around the markets or with oneself, that forgiveness is the most important thing that you can do, because you can be angry at somebody and that can affect you without them even knowing it. So by forgiving, you can let go of that anger and move on. You don't have to forget about it, of course, but you don't have to let it affect your day or your life moving forward. So the emotion and the anger around taking losses is it's something that we all have to deal with, and nobody's perfect at it. I'm not perfect at it. There are times when I will take that next step when I'm feeling angry, and that's usually going to be a trade that's going to be out of process and out of strategy, and I hope it doesn't play out my way, because that just reinforces bad behavior. But the best out is usually your first out. Just like the guy standing next to me saying, "Okay, good." He got out at his best out, and then he took that information, acted like he paid for it, so there's no anger there, and moved on.
John,
there's a million ways to look at this. Yeah, go ahead.
You said something though that I want to point out. You made the comment about not forgetting the losses. You got to move on, but you can't forget them, right? Because like John said, you're paying for information. Don't pay the same price twice. I've always looked at losses in a pretty, I have an ego. I have no problem denying it. I've got an ego. I come into trading to make money, to be good at it. Everything I've done in my life, it's don't quit. College athlete, Marine, like that's my mentality. Like I would say I'm truthfully not bred to be a good trader, and I've had to find ways to spin it in my favor because traders, they want to win, but they want to make money. And I like to be right. And there's a balance here, right? And I've said this on a multiple places over the years. Trading is not about being right; it's about being profitable. And if you can kind of check that ego, or in some ways lean into that ego and focus the ego on the profits not being correct and not being right, because these losses, I think so many people when they're in a trade and it starts to go against, and then the first thing is I'm going to move my stop a little bit. I'm going to give it a little room. That's step number one of focusing, caring more about being right than profitable. And then all of a sudden you've kind of taken that stop away. You're like, I'm going to do a manual stop. You know what? I'm going to leverage in here. I'm actually going to buy another. I'm going to bring my average price down. That way, when it does bounce and I'm right, AK, at this point, you have now said you're wrong. And you're trying to manipulate things to go into your favor. And don't get me wrong, I have done it. I have leveraged in when I shouldn't have.
This is when that friend of yours in the pit would say, hey, what are you doing?
Yep. You got to kind of check yourself. And now there's two different things. And I want to be clear here. You can leverage into a losing trade because you have areas to say, hey, my strategy says I can buy in here. Okay. I really want to be in this trade. I don't want to miss the trade, but I'm going to use a quarter unit, or I'm going to use an eighth of a unit, or I'm going to use a half a unit. And as it comes down, okay, sweet. I'm actually getting better fill now. I like it. I'm in my trade. I've got room down 10 more points or whatever you're looking at, right? You can kind of continue to work in, but it's when you've gone past that point of sound reason and logic, and you're just trying to get in to lower the average price. Those are two different things. Yeah. So as you do this,
falling into hopium.
Right. You're falling into this trap. We've all been in it. I don't think there's a trader that hasn't. And if you haven't been around long enough, or you're still brand new at this. Like everyone's done it. It's acceptable. Learn your lesson once, pay that lesson once, and don't do it again.
Right.
But really it comes down to the focus it's all about being profitable in this. And at the end of the day, your statements and P&L are what are going to speak. It has nothing to do with your bias of if you thought long or short. It has to do with how much money you're going to make or lose. And the guy who loses money, he's going to struggle. And the guy who makes money is going to accept, hey, I got the market in my favor. I accepted that I was wrong. I got out of that trade quickly. I was able to find another opportunity to get with the movement and accept that direction that I didn't believe in at the beginning. That's why a lot of times everyone says have multiple. What do I do if the market goes up? What do I do if the market goes down? And what do I do if the market goes sideways? So it's really having those things, focusing on being profitable. And at the end of the day, profitable is a heck of a lot more successful than being right. Because more often than not, we're going to be wrong, and we got to find ways to manage it when we're wrong so that we can be profitable, because that's what matters. And let that be where your ego sticks in, not about being right. You don't have to, you can come into a day and have 99% confidence that markets are going higher, right? Let's talk crude oil. You can come in and say, I think crude oil is going to rip it to $93 or $98 tomorrow. And let's say they break down to 78, which would be phenomenal. I'd really enjoy that.
Yes.
Let's say they break to 78, but you're telling everyone you think it's going to 98. You got a 99% certainty. Once that market starts to trade, and all of a sudden you're taking a couple losses. Hey, I don't like this. You know what? 98's not happening. 78 might be more realistic. I accept the short side. You end the day profitable. Most people that you told that, hey, I'm confident it's going to 98 are thinking, man, this guy got creamed today. But because you accepted loss and you accepted being wrong, you're able to get in on the right side of the trade, and you're walking away with a profitable day.
Yeah. Sometimes the market is telling you, and you just have to be aware and open enough to accept the information that may be contrary to what you think. Is kind of what you're saying there. And, the other point you were making is there's a big difference between leveraging into a loss and accumulating an inventory in a zone.
Yes.
You're leveraging into a loss when you're just trying to bring that average price down so maybe the market can come back and you can get out of this thing. Always a bad idea. But look, getting in a zone is perfectly viable part of any good strategy, right? And the other thing you mentioned was no, you said you're not hardwired really to worry about being right or wrong. It's more about the money, but I don't think anybody's necessarily hardwired to be successful at this. The loss, you put that first loss on and you don't want to take it, so you move your stop. You default to, well, maybe I'll wait. The market should come back and make me whole again. And we end up just creating bigger losses because of that. That's why we said, that the first stop is the best stop. The other side of that coin is when you start making money after a couple of losses, you may have just had two losers of $500 each, but that $50 winner is going to feel real good, right?
Oh yeah. Well, it's funny, John, you mentioned this, and I'm thinking about like my own personal evolution in trading. When I first got into trading, I hated this idea of stops, just like probably everyone. I'm like, well, I keep getting stopped out, and I got better with stops. Once I actually accepted stops, I have a catastrophic stop that automatically goes in with any trade I put on, but I have I run manual stops. Like I know where my out is, and I recognize momentum, and I recognize order flow as the market approaches to say, okay, I have a couple more ticks, or hey, I can save 5 ticks and get out of this. I've found once I got really comfortable with tighter stops, when I shifted back to the manual stop process, my stops got even tighter because I'm like, it's not going to happen. Just get out. Look for the next one. And I really, it's reined me in even more, but it took me a very long time to get comfortable getting stopped out.
Well,
times have changed. I've matured.
There's always a point of invalidation. There's always a level, a price level that prices get advertised to prove the trade wrong in your eyes, right? And Jim Dalton, says, yeah, you should always have a stop, but you should never get out at your stop. You should recognize that the trade's going to be wrong before it gets there, whether you agree with that or not. It sounds a little bit like what you're talking about. You have your stop level, but if things aren't working out, you're going to be out of it before you get to that level.
Screen time. It's the most important thing in trading. The more time you spend, the more in tune you get with the market. And we've talked about this, I believe, on a coach's playbook. And I think I've mentioned it on the podcast with Jack a couple weeks ago, but we did an internal trading competition. And it was a trader at TopStep with a couple other coworkers that were not traders, which we were trying to teach them a little bit. And that was one of the things I was kind of teaching as we were going. I would say guys, I don't like this position. And they're like, well, but you said the level here. I go, well, now momentum's changed. I'm watching order flow come in. It's telling me it's just going to scream down to where our out is. And they're like, well, why don't we stay to the stop? And then it screams to our out and continues low. And they're like, how'd you know? I go, well, I've spent, God, I don't even want to know how many hours staring at these markets and recognizing my little heartbeat. As my dad always told me, every market's got a heartbeat. You just got to learn the rhythm of it. And as I've learned that heartbeat and rhythm, it's amazing. It truly is true what you're saying. You should know that the trade is not going to work well before it gets to your stop. And obviously there are times where you get into the trade and it just rips down to your stop. You didn't even see it coming. But the longer trades, you start to know ahead of time.
Yeah. And, we may be wrong in getting out early of the trade out once in a while, but doesn't mean we can't get back in it. Because I know a lot of folks, and I know I don't get any smarter once the trade is on. But sometimes you got to be able to recognize when something changes and you're going to get out.
You become emotionally attached to a trade when it goes against you. So keep those stops in place. And if, don't hesitate to get out of the trade early. Accepting loss, what it's going to really do to come for a full circle here, accepting that loss is going to allow you to continue to trade in your future. If you don't accept that loss and you let it go against you, well,
the most important thing about always trading for tomorrow is to limit those losses.
Exactly. Well, John, I appreciate you hopping in here with me today. This was a fun change of pace. It's been nice chatting with you. It's like a recap pre-2020. So this has been a lot of fun.
Awesome. Well, thanks for inviting me. And anytime, I'm always looking forward to hanging out with Dan and talking traders with traders.
Awesome. Thanks, John. For everybody out there, don't forget to tune into YouTube. John's live multiple times a day. We've got forecast, recap, make Hogue money. weekly group coachings. Don't forget to like and share this video. Give us a rating on whatever podcast subscription you're listening to. Only if it's a 5-star. If it's less than that, I guess you can just give us some feedback. Let us know what you think. But until next week, as Jack would normally say, namaste and trade well.